Hey, what's up, y'all? It's Chris, your sneaker professor. I am officially back into sneaker professor mode as opposed to track coach mode. But hey, they're one and the same as far as I'm concerned because I get to work with athletes, I get to talk sneakers, it's all love. And today's post is from an article I wrote last week at the end of the NBA Finals when Jaylen Brown nabbed the MVP. And when I wrote the article, my first thought was this kind of cements the fact that signature hoop shoes are just kind of declining in value. Jaylen Brown does not have a sneaker deal. He was with Adidas. He wore Kobe's with the swoosh removed for the majority of the season this year. And it kind of speaks to the idea that we're in a completely different time frame as far as sneakers are concerned. But let's jump into it because I'll be popping up a lot of images during this conversation. And hopefully, you'll kind of get the gist of what I'm saying. Let's go. So ESPN delivered like this insight into how Jaylen Brown grabbed the prestigious Finals MVP award with three signature sneaker athletes in this year's championship game. Jaylen Brown nabbed the award while not being attached to a sneaker brand. So what does that mean? Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, they have signature sneakers with Jordan brand. Kyrie Irving is with Chinese brand Anta. Now, if you think about sneaker resale, it's always been a tool to measure brand heat, according to me. Now, most people look at sneaker resale and they think about selling the hottest shoes and just making a ton of money. I use it to do analysis and data and write papers for different companies. And I try to explain and make things a little bit more business oriented as far as the sneaker community is concerned. Now, it doesn't necessarily garner a lot of attention, but it's really good information if you pay attention to it. So when I look at sneaker resale, I look at it as a tool to measure brand heat. How hot is Nike? How hot is Adidas? Now, StockX provides a ton of information for those who are willing to kind of go through the data and look at it. So when you look at Jason Tatum's latest sneaker, the Jordan Tatum 2, when you really start digging into the data, it checks in at under SRP for the average sold price on models across the board. Now, I'm not opening up that window to go through that, but the Jordan Luka 2 falls in line with the Tatum 2. Now, there's something that really, is kind of interesting when you look at the Jordan Luka data, and I talked about it in this post. I'm going to open that link in a different tab. And about a couple of years ago, I wrote, "Has Nike basketball bounced back?" And when I got into that conversation, I was looking at how all of these shoes feature some kind of Kobe-esque design. Now, if you watch the video on the Sabrina 2, then you know that I've been discussing how the Kobe design aesthetics are really influencing a lot of Nike's design. But when I wrote that, the Luka was a $110 shoe. It was a $110 shoe. That model, the Luka 1, was one of the few shoes that kind of hit a resale value, and it sold fairly well. The Luka 1 was solid. But right now, if you check the Luka 2 versus the Luka 1, the average sold price of the Luka 1 is at above retail. Now, that's because the shoe is no longer available. But it was above retail a couple of years ago, and I did a few discussions about it. The Luka 2, however, is below retail. So why is this happening with Luka? What does it have to do with Jaylen Brown? Where am I going with this? Let's keep going. Simple answers. There's some really simple answers. Nike increased the price of the Luka 2. The options in the Luka 2 now range from $120 to $140. So that's $110 when the shoe was released 2 years ago, all the way up to $140 on some Lukas. The Tatum faced the same price hike. Here's Nike. we know that if we're looking at this today, if we're looking at this in the future, then today is a day that Nike is going to make an announcement on their earnings. Nike is cutting into its own margins in a sense because they're jacking the price up on everything. The Tatum faced a similar price hike. When it first dropped, the Tatum 1 was $110. That shoe is now $125. You're talking about a $15 bump in price. Now, what's another potential reason for the lack of interest on the Tatum 2, the Luka 2? Especially when we consider both guys competed in the NBA Finals, so we should have seen a bump in interest on their shoes. But this goes back to something I talked about with the Ja series, and that basketball is now seasonal. That's a different discussion. It requires a lot of detail. But both of the models, the Luka 2 and the Tatum 2, they are designed outside of the what I call the Kobe aesthetic. So the low-cut Kobe-style sneakers from Nike sell better than any signature model shoes that are released from the swoosh. Now, Nike tends to limit the amount of Kobe's produced, and rightfully so. We know this. Prior to Kobe's death, the Kobe's were clearance store staples. I talked about that with the Sabrina video. Now, the Sabrina 1 in the GT Cut series, and the GT Cut doesn't have an athlete attached to it outside of people who are wearing signature releases or player exclusives. There's no signature athlete attached to the GT Cut. But the Sabrina and the GT Cut perform very well on the market for basketball shoes. I think they can be considered replacements for the Kobe line. Now, I'm going to jump into this. I want to open this image in a new tab so you can see it more clearly. And this is an Anta, but you see the Kyrie 1 here. And this is by average sale price. And this is on the Anta, and this is the Shockwave 5, the Anta Kai 1, the Anta Shockwave 5. When you go through it, the average sale price on those is way, way above retail. And when we jump into it and we say that signature sneakers are not selling very well as far as resale is concerned, we have to place a really big asterisk around the Kyrie Anta. It can't be placed in the same category as the Luka and the Tatum. Kyrie's signature shoes, even when he was just wearing that Shockwave, it's a new model and it has very limited distribution. There's a scarcity model in place. What does that mean? Whenever things are scarce, resale goes off the charts. But if you want to try the brand on and get it on foot, you're not going to be able to just walk into a store and do that. The Kyrie Anta series is basically a digital-only pure play sales strategy. You can't decide to walk into a Foot Locker or a Finish Line and try on a pair of Kyries, which means the resale is going to be high. That doesn't mean a lot of shoes are selling. That means shoes are turning over within the resale market. I don't necessarily think hoopers are buying those shoes to hoop in, and I definitely don't think casual buyers are buying it to rock. I think what's happening here is it's a limited shoe, it's scarce, it's floating inside of what can be considered the resale bubble. Doesn't mean it's going to do super well when it comes out. Doesn't mean that it's probably going to do well in China. Yeah, definitely. So you can walk into a Nike store or a Foot Locker and you can try on any of these signature models from those brands. And you can get these basketball sneakers from Nike. Accessibility isn't an issue. That means the price naturally in resale is going to decline. Marketing isn't an issue for Nike basketball and Jordan signature sneakers. Those models are the most visible sneaker lines from the company. You can see them anywhere. The Nike swoosh The logo, the shoes, everything is visible 24 hours a day via ESPN and YouTube highlights and discussions on chat rooms and on X and all of these different sites. Basketball videos on social media channels do extremely well. If you're a basketball player and you don't have a YouTube station, you're probably not doing what you should be doing, because those channels do really well. So you can see basically Nike basketball shoes everywhere. Now, you'll get some people who are wearing different styles, but the majority of the shoes that you see are Nike basketball. When a consumer begins to look at sneaker purchases, they don't really care about basketball shoes. And once again, this reverts back to the Ja discussion. In the Ja discussion, I explained that the seasonality of basketball shoes has shifted that marketplace. It's shifted it completely. People aren't necessarily rocking basketball shoes. Now, that's changed a bit, and it shows that you can kind of capture a moment. But I don't want to get too far ahead here. When people go to buy shoes, they focus on retro and comfort. And that's the first thing that they're looking for. Now, I'm going to open up this small image here so you can see it. This is from April 2024 from StockX in their Power Sellers report. So when you look at this Power Sellers report, I'm opening that up so you can see it. If you look and we go through this, you only have one signature basketball shoe that makes it into the top 20 shoes sold. And that signature shoe is the Nike Book 1 Haven. That's in April. It changed considerably in May. So we're going to go to that next. But I want to make sure you see the only signatures, Kobe. Let's see if we see anything else. Jordan 4, right? But that Book 1 that shows up in that information, that's the only one. And it was a super limited release. That was the Haven. That model was super limited. You couldn't get it everywhere. So it will tend to pop up just a bit in resale. But we're going to go back and look at that Book Haven real quick. It's only $21 above retail. That means whoever sold that shoe probably lost money. After all of the fees and everything else, unless they got it at a cheap price, they lost money. So that's not really verifiable evidence that the Book 1 is hot. As a matter of fact, it's not. The Book 1 is going to soon be a discount shoe, even though not that many of them have released. But you have to think about it from this standpoint. Nike treats basketball in the US like it's still in the 90s. For some reason, the people who work there don't seem very aware of the seasonality of their own product. It's wild when you think about it. So when you have Kobe's and Jordans, and those are signature exceptions, this is going to help us move the discussion back to Jaylen Brown. And here's a question. If Jaylen Brown signed with a brand tomorrow, do you think his shoes would fare any better than the Jordan Tatum or the Jordan Luka? I'm willing to bet you're saying, nah. And I agree. If Jaylen Brown released a shoe, the one kind of performance indicator that exists where you can kind of see things doing better, it's price point. It's definitely price point. When the Luka first came out at $110 and the Tatum came out, those shoes did fairly well at $110. Nike shot the price up. The Ja 1 did very well when it was first released. It was $110. It is now $120. Although $120 is kind of the sweet spot for basketball, bumping the prices up on those shoes can jar the customer. So here's another thing. Our brands, right? And I'm going to go to this May 24 seller report. Are brands stuck in a marketing loop? Are they stuck in a marketing loop, hoping to catch lightning in a bottle, like Adidas just did with the Anthony Edwards signature sneaker? They are definitely trying to catch lightning in a bottle. But this is the thing. Lightning doesn't really get trapped in a bottle. That's why the cliche is about how difficult that task is. Jaylen Brown attained an amazing career accomplishment. But as it relates to sneakers, it really doesn't matter. There's not going to be a memory attached to his championship or his MVP victory. There's no shoe that can come out and celebrate it later. There's no legacy attached to his moment outside of just basketball. For the first time in years, a signature sneaker isn't connected to a finals MVP. Now, I guess we could look at the big fella out in Denver, the Joker, and say that's another one. But that only reaffirms what I'm saying. Basketball is no longer the foundation of sneaker culture. It's extremely important. I'm not saying it's not important. It's extremely important, but it's no longer the foundation of sneaker culture. You know what is the foundation of what this new sneaker culture is? Influencers. People who can get shoes early. That seems to be more of a driving force behind some sales than an athlete. But like I said, Adidas. Let's go to that May 24. And you can see here clearly that the book one dropped out in May. The power of the resale market, is extremely important that you understand this. The resale market indicates and gives you an idea in real time of what people think about certain sneakers. Now, does that mean the mainstream person who buys the majority of the shoes in the world? Does that mean that those people are included in this? Yeah, to an extent. But the people who will pay more for a shoe than the average person who will only pay $80 for a shoe, those people who will pay more in some instances are more valuable, specifically when it comes to Jordan and retros, right? But when we look at this sheet, this new May, when we go from April to May in the top 20, and we get through this top 20 and we try to find signature sneakers, we're going to have Kobe, Jordan, Kobe, Jordan, Kobe, Jordan, Kobe, Jordan, same thing all the way through, but just outside of the top 20 and throughout the top 100 shoes that are selling, the best performers on StockX, right outside of it, 23, Adidas AE1. Let's keep going here. We got Yeezy, Adidas AE1 at 23. Let's see when it shows up again. Adidas AE1 at 44. Let's keep going. Adidas AE1 at 50. Adidas AE1 at 55. Adidas AE1 at 63. And of course, May saw basically Anthony Edwards become a Michael Jordan-esque figure. Nike had no one in a signature sneaker to become that. Jordan Brand did not have that moment. So Jaylen Brown didn't help, or doesn't signify, or he signifies the kind of decline in signature sneakers. But Anthony Edwards is a completely different thing. And Anthony Edwards is catching lightning in a bottle. However, his sneaker does pop up at that sweet spot of 120. So is it price that allows Anthony Edwards to become a resale stalwart? We go back to 23 and we look at the price is 24, the price premium. It's only $24 above retail. That's a loss for somebody who sold that. I went down and I found another AE1 at 44 and it's $33, so it's slightly higher. These may be people who are simply buying those shoes because they assume they're going to get hot, or they are actually hoopers buying them because they want to hoop in that shoe. We don't know. It's something to look at in the future. But Jaylen Brown winning the MVP is almost validation that signature sneakers are not what we think they are anymore. and that basketball brands have to understand seasonality. And if they are not looking into that, they're in trouble. Going to wrap this up. That's a long one. I like a little bit of podcast on sneaker talk, man. I'm enjoying getting back to this after the track season is over. A lot of basketball talk going to be going up on the website. Matter of fact, let's see if the Chuck is doing that, and I'm going to wrap this video up. See if he's sharing. Oh, yeah. A lot of basketball talk on the website, too. So if you're interested in the region that's around Memphis and hoops, go to the website and check it out, arch-usa.com. Once again, it's your sneaker professor, Chris. I'm going to wrap this one up, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.